AskReddit by Reddit. How would you feel about a law requiring parents that receive child support to supply the court with proof of how the child support money is being spent? Who decides whether taking a child to Chuck E. Cheese is appropriate use of money? Keep the government away from citizens' lives. Deleted. Work for JDRC courts, and although this would probably fall under DCSE, their workload is already outstanding for how much they make and the hours they have to work. This would never work out well. How much money would it waste reviewing and verifying this proof? Yeah, in most cases it's just entirely impractical. Unless most of your income is from child support, money is fungible. Prove you spent the money on the child? Okay, I spent child support money on rent and food and I spent my regular income on a sports car. Because it would suddenly turn that everything but bare necessities is an unaffordable luxury. My friend's father threw a tantrum when he saw that he got new shoes because second-hand is enough, not that he himself bought his wardrobe here, refused to pay for any vacations, edit, Boy Scouts camp, or repair his bike. This is a common argument from men who care more about their money than their children. Imo, no. I pay my daughter's father, and trust he does what is best. If their family is struggling with expenses, so is my daughter because she is part of that family too. That's just how I see it. Now, if they went and got into a bunch of financial trouble that was just completely unnecessary, and he couldn't bounce back, maybe that would be grounds to get full custody through the courts. If he couldn't balance the budget appropriately, it would no longer be in her interest to keep her in that household. 100% agreed with this. At some point, lacking basic financial responsibility becomes a custody issue, and should be handled in those terms rather than via financial micromanagement. Amazes me the amount of overlap between people who advocate this and people who advocate having the government get off their backs. Get off my back, but get all over my bitchexes. Gov power is a cudgel I want wielded against people I dislike. It's one of those things that sounds good in theory but will be too costly and impractical to do. Edit for clarification. For the people arguing with me, yes, I already know there's no real way for it to work. I simply mean that it sounds good on the surface, but once you start trying to figure out how to do it, the whole idea falls apart. Deleted. Deleted. A lot of people don't understand this. I've seen people say that child support should only go to food, clothing, school supplies, etc. for the child. Well, what happens when the parent is a little short on electric or water? Are they supposed to not pay it because it isn't listed above? Same with gas. It might be filling up the parent's car, but it's used by the child as well. I grew up with a single mom that struggled to get by. She had 3 part-time jobs at one point and money was always an issue. The child support had to go to whatever was needed at the time. Sometimes stuff like clothes for me, but other times on things I bet people would think was frivolous. Perhaps the car needed to be fixed or something that's not directly related to supporting a kid. Having to document what you spend the money on would be demeaning to people who already are in a shitty situation. It sounds like something you'd hear about in countries we'd rather not compare ourselves to. Don't you mean, who's willing to pay higher taxes so the courts can hire more people to monitor everyone's personal life? It's like in 2015 when the Canadian Auditor General spent $23 million investigating questionable expenses in the Senate. The questionable expenses totaled about $1 million. As much as some regulation would be great, I pay child support. It's not that cost effective to monitor amounts that small. It would be pointless in almost all cases. Money is fungible, so all one would have to do is provide receipts for food, clothing, bills, etc., which almost everyone has. Plus, don't we have enough bureaucracy already? Now we're going to set up a new division of the government whose sole purpose is to nanny single parents, who already have enough to take care of on their own? Horrible idea. I can't believe I had to scroll this far down for someone to point out the obvious: money is fungible. I guess here's my problem with that. Say I get $200 in child support and $1,800 from my job. I spend $500 on stuff for my kid, but I also spend $200 on a giant box of dildos for myself. I can just see cranky exes wasting time in court about spending child support money on dildos. Agreed. This law would look exactly like this. Daycare, mortgage, soccer payment are all paid on the 31st. Child support received on the 1st. Get a haircut on the 2nd. Spending my money on haircuts, Your Honor. People who think this is a good idea have never worked with parents and separated children. I worked for CPS for 3 years, and people will come up with any reason to discredit people with their child. Kid has a bruise? Abuse. Kid has a braid now? Why didn't they ask me? Kid says he has a bad day at school? Must be being psychologically tormented. Parents will dispute the brand of cereal they buy, the cost of their haircuts, and how much these kids actually need the things that are bought for them. Did they need a toy over new jeans? Must be neglecting them. Childcare courts are clogged as it is. We don't need vindictive fathers going over line by line every expenditure and arguing what it is not good expenditures for their children. The comments about saving receipts, keeping track of expenses, etc. sounds like a lot of work to add on to a single parent's list of responsibilities. It may not seem like it, but taking kids to and from various after-school programs, to and from daycare, school, and then working 40+ hours a week all while managing the household alone are a lot to handle without the added responsibilities some people are suggesting. I understand that seeing things itemized or tracked would make the parent paying child support feel more at ease about where the money is going. The easiest way to see that your child is being taken care of appropriately is to just talk to your child during visitation and take part in your child's life as well. Most single parents aren't blowing all their money on themselves. The majority of middle-class single parents spend all the child support on their child's necessities, and then spend a large portion of their own income on their child's wants and needs as well, while making large sacrifices to their own lifestyle. I would feel as strongly as I would about welfare recipients supplying the courts with evidence of how their welfare money is spent. The courts are busy enough as it is. We don't need the government babysitting us any further. If an individual is granted child support, how they choose to spend that money is entirely up to them. The courts should only get involved if there is actual evidence of misuse or that if the child is suffering or being neglected. I truly hate this question. My ex had a job up until child support was to be paid and he quit 7 years ago so he could cry poverty and have his support amount lowered. He then proceeded to have 4 more children and still neither he or his girlfriend work. He doesn't pay the support until I take him to court, where I pay for a lawyer and he gets a county paid public defender, and he weasels his way out of jail time by paying a small lump sum. I don't need his money and I have worked 2 jobs to support my child this whole time, so I'll be damned to have to prove how I spend it. No, it would be nitpicky and callous and would waste an incredible amount of the court's time and money. Not only that, it would create a new, massive bureaucracy and waste the time of all involved. It's one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. I think the law would be redundant. Every child has needs that must be met or risk CPS involvement. Beyond needs are wants, and trying to codify what wants are necessary is a super sticky problem. Every culture and community will be different on this and would be impossible to create a universal standard. Thus, I don't see the point of this other than to give anti-government types something to scream government overreach at. Maybe someone should make sure the child support actually gets paid before worrying about all this. No, most of the single parents I know are just barely coping. Juggling kids, housework, often study and everything else. Someone thinks it is a good idea to add to the burden and make a stressful, hard job Marizo? Do we really want the government deciding what we can and cannot buy for our children? Sounds burdensome. As a child whose mother received 0 payments from 3 months to 18 years, perhaps we should enforce just paying it in the first place. My father is still a free man and royal piece of shit tax dodger. It would be impossible to prove. For example, let's say Rob is the custodial parent of his 2 kids, and his ex Karen pays $700 a month child support. Rob gets paid on the 1st of the month, and receives child support on the 28th. The day he gets child support, he buys a $150 pair of boots, a $60 pair of pants, and replaces parts for his motorcycle for $300. Karen freaks out that most of her money has gone to Rob's hobbies. Rob produces receipts that show he spent $400 on groceries, $150 on summer clothes for the girls, and $500 in daycare. It came out of his paycheck rather than her child support. He argues that in fact he did the right thing as a father by providing for them earlier in the month and treating himself later. The vast majority of wasting my child support cases are like that. There are already laws against parental neglect and failure to provide material support. If children are being neglected, don't hesitate to call CPS or your country's equivalent. I noticed and appreciated that you flipped the genders in this. This thread is devolving into single mothers are hoes that spend too much money on their hair and nails, and the kids' fathers are just hard-working men who have to bankroll it. I as happily married as you can be, and my husband and I are raising 2 daughters. We both work full-time and have a shared account. I'm sure he has no idea that the majority of the money I spend is on them. In our arguments about money, he has said that I spend more $ and write checks more. Yes, I do spend more because I'm buying for myself and 2 kids, and he just buys items for himself. If we were to divorce, I know he would be shocked on how much he would have to spend on them, or how much child support he would have to pay. I think for the non-custodial parent it is eye-opening how much kids cost. I used to work in a Toys R Us Babies R Us combination store. Had fathers come in regularly that didn't understand that formula is expensive, no clue what baby food cost, etc. They would freak out when I rang up basic necessities and insist I had made a mistake. And yet the $100+ USD spent on video games in the same transaction was not treated with the same shock. A non-custodial parent isn't going to be buying what their child needs, so of course they're going to get sticker shock and complain that the ex must be mooching off of them. How much are you willing to hurt the majority of people that use child support correctly, in order to catch the people who use it incorrectly? How much of a burden should legit people suffer so that you feel like the baddies get caught? It would just open it up to criticisms based on nothing more than opinion. You took her to the zoo. What a frivolous, wasteful expense. Why are you buying non-gluten-free bread? Why aren't you buying higher quality clothes? Why aren't you buying cheaper clothes? It sounds good in theory, but even if everyone could agree on what expenses should be allowed, and that would be very hard to agree to, there would need to be a way to monitor and regulate it, which wouldn't be cheap, so someone would have to pay for it. I pay child support. I don't pay it to their mother, I pay it to my children. I don't care how their mother spends it as long as everyone is happy. If my kid's mother is happy, then they are happy. I want my kids and their mother to be comfortable and worry-free. It's none of my business how she spends her money as long as I know that my kids are getting the best that we can provide them. So, what all my ex-husband, the cheating bastard, has to do is see the kids for a few hours a week and every other weekend. But now it's my job to keep track of receipts and purchases on top of all the other shit I already do that he doesn't, just so I can show him what I spend child support money on? Yeah, no fucking way in hell. My dad would get mad at my mom because she would pay bills with the child support money instead of buying us toys. Even when I was little I was like, I think bills are more important.